Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India Live, India's voice to the world. I'm Mark Lynn. Namaskar. Coming up in the next 30 minutes. Narendra Modi to be sworn in as Prime Minister for a third term on June 9. Leaders from India's neighborhood begin arriving for the ceremony. Bangladesh's Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina and Seychelles' Vice President Ahmed Afif in New Delhi. Voters in Slovakia, Italy and other EU nations are casting their votes on the third day of the European parliamentary polls. Israeli Defense Forces rescue 4 hostages from Gaza Strip. 3 of them are in their early 20s. The President of India, Draupadi Murmu, has invited Narendra Modi to form the government for the third consecutive time after letters of support were submitted by leaders of the National Democratic Alliance parties as well as the BJP Parliamentary Party electing him as their leader. Swearing in for the third Modi government to take place on the 9th of June at the Rashtrapati Bhavan. President Murmu also fed dahi chini or sweet curd to Prime Minister-elect Modi. In Indian culture, eating dahi chini is considered auspicious before undertaking important tasks or starting a new venture. Top South Asian leaders have been invited to the oath ceremony of Prime Minister Narendra Modi, reflecting the government's neighbourhood-first policy. World leaders like the President of Sri Lanka, Ranil Wickremesinghe, the President of the Maldives, Dr. Mohamed Muizu, the Vice President of Seychelles, Ahmed Afif, the Prime Minister of Bangladesh, Sheikh Hasina, Prime Minister of Mauritius, Pravind Kumar Jagannath, the Prime Minister of Nepal, Pushpa Kamal Dahal or Prachanda, and Prime Minister of Bhutan, Shering Togbe, have accepted the invitation to attend. In addition to participating in the swearing-in ceremony, the leaders will attend a banquet hosted by President Draupadi Murmu at the Rashtrapati Bhavan the same evening. Bangladesh's Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina has reached New Delhi ahead of the oath-taking ceremony. A special flight from Dhaka carried Sheikh Hasina and her entourage members to the national capital. Sheikh Hasina was received by a high-level Indian delegation and Bangladesh's High Commissioner to India, Mohammad Mustafizur Rahman, at the airport. Welcoming the Bangladesh Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, India's External Affairs Ministry in a tweet said, "The first distinguished the guest has sets foot in New Delhi for the swearing-in ceremony of Prime Minister and the Council of Ministers. PM Sheikh Hasina of Bangladesh, warmly received by Secretary Consular, Passport, Visa and Overseas Indian Affairs, Muktesh Pardeshi, as she arrived in New Delhi. This visit of one of our most valued partners will further strengthen India-Bangladesh close and deep-rooted bonds of friendship." So world leaders have started to arrive in the national capital ahead of the oath-taking ceremony of Prime Minister Narendra Modi. The Vice President of the Republic of Seychelles, Ahmed Afif, also arrived in New Delhi to attend the swearing-in ceremony. Meanwhile, India's Opposition Congress Working Committee passed a resolution requesting Rahul Gandhi to take up the role of the leader of the opposition in the lower house. At a meeting where the party's top leaders held discussions on the future strategy at a meeting in New Delhi. The Congress Parliamentary Party chairperson Sonia Gandhi and the Congress's President Mallikarjun Kharge, the party MP Rahul Gandhi, party's General Secretary Priyanka Vadra and other party leaders attended this meeting.
CWC unanimously requested Sri Rahul Gandhi ji to take the leader of the opposition position in Lok Sabha. all the participants unanimously put up their views on this issue. Everybody was unanimous that Rahul ji should take leader of the opposition position in the Lok Sabha, because we already told during this election we raised so many issues, burning issues, unemployment, price rise, Agniveer-like issues, women issues, social justice issues. So these issues has to be continued in a greater manner inside the parliament also. Rahul ji is the best person to lead this campaign inside the parliament. This is what the CWC's view.
The Conservative politician Penny Mordaunt has announced in a television interview that the party's election manifesto will be released next week, while Britain's opposition Labour Party is also expected to release its manifesto next week ahead of the July 4 election. And DD India's Ollie Barrett has sent us this report from London.
Well, if you look at the campaign trail just today, the two main parties are focusing on economic issues, really. The Conservatives are promising to retain a removal of the so-called stamp duty property tax for properties up to a certain value. They say that that would help more people onto the housing ladder and particularly help people finding difficulties affording the ability to buy a property. The Labour Party today also focusing on economic issues as well and making various pledges in that domain, and economic issues are front and centre in this campaign so far, partly because of the cost of living crisis that the UK, like many other countries, has been experiencing. But it's not all about the economy. Migration is also a central theme, with the Conservatives promising that Rwanda migration plan to send some asylum seekers to Rwanda to pursue their claims there. The Labour Party say that they would get on top of immigration in a different way and they would scrap the Rwanda scheme altogether. Lots of pledges around veterans affairs and defence spending too. The parties have a slightly different position on defence spending, in the sense that the Conservatives say that they would get up to 2.5% of GDP being spent on defence by the year 2030. The Labour Party say they would get up to 2.5% as well, but aren't putting a timeline on it. So there are differences between the parties, and the campaign at this point being fought around a number of significant issues, from the economy to migration to taxation to crime and security as well. Lots to talk about on the campaign trail today, as I say, a focus from both of the two main parties on economic issues.
Israeli forces have rescued 4 hostages from the central Gaza Strip in a special operation involving hundreds of troops on Saturday. Israeli army said that the operation, which was weeks in the planning, was held while troops were under fire from Hamas. The 4 hostages, 3 males and a female, were kidnapped by Hamas from the Nova Music Festival on October 7th last year. The hostages were held in 2 houses in a residential neighborhood.
Noah, Almog, Andrei, and Shlomi were rescued after 246 days in Hamas captivity after they were brutally kidnapped from the Nova Musical Festival on the 7th of October. This was a high-risk, complex mission based on precise intelligence conducted in daylight in 2 separate buildings deep inside Gaza. While under fire inside the buildings, under fire on the way out from Gaza, our forces rescued our hostages.
And Denmark's Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen has suffered a slight whiplash injury. This is after she was assaulted by a man in central Copenhagen on Friday. All the Prime Minister's official events on Saturday had been cancelled. The Danish police said on Saturday a 39-year-old man would appear in front of a judge for preliminary questioning in relation to this assault on the Prime Minister. The assault comes 2 days after Danes held ahead for polls in the EU election. 3 weeks ago, Slovakia's Prime Minister Robert Fitza Fico was also seriously injured in an assassination attempt. An eyewitness saw the Prime Minister being escorted away by National and Intelligence Security personnel following this assault.
Well, I saw the Prime Minister sitting with a friend at this table, and just I think it was 1 minute, 2 minutes afterwards, 4 PET guys showed up, talked about an arrest has been made, and then she was escorted by the 4 PETs to some place around in the middle of the square, and then escorted just away around the corner.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi expressed concern about his Danish counterpart Mette Frederiksen after she was assaulted in central Copenhagen on Friday ahead of the EU elections. The Prime Minister Modi, says he was deeply concerned by the news of this attack on Mette Frederiksen. Denmark's Prime Minister, we condemn the attack, wishing good health to my friend. That's what Prime Minister Modi had tweeted. Now, speaking about the West providing Ukraine with long-range weapons, the Russian President Vladimir Putin said that Russia reserves the right to respond and provide similar weapons to the countries which are under pressure from the West, but Russia has not done so yet and does not intend to do so immediately.
And now about us supplying weapons to the countries hostile to the West. We do not supply them yet, not yet. But we reserve for ourselves the right to do so to those states or even some legal entities who are feeling certain pressure, including the one of military nature, from the countries which supply the weapons to Ukraine, and urge them to use it against us, against our Russian territory.
Putin also spoke about the use of nuclear weapons, stressing that he did not see the conditions for the use of such weapons as set out in Russia's nuclear doctrine. But he added that he could not rule out a change to the doctrine.
Using nuclear weapons, not using in what circumstances. We have a nuclear doctrine, everything is written there. Using nuclear weapons is possible in case of an exceptional threat to the sovereignty and territorial integrity of the country, in exceptional cases. I don't think there is such a case now, and there is no need for that. But this doctrine is a living instrument, and we watch closely what is happening in the world and around us. We don't exclude making some changes to this doctrine.
DD India's Dasha Chernyshova sent us this report from Moscow.
Well, that's right. The Russian president is once again sending a message to the Western countries that Russia is willing to find a negotiated solution to the conflict in Ukraine. Having said that, Moscow wants to insist very clearly and very strongly that Russia's interests have to be taken into account. So that's why the Russian president is saying that the peace talks are only possible if Ukraine agrees to talk about the conditions of this agreement, taking into account the realities on the ground, the present situation, as well as taking as the basis for these negotiations the arrangements that have been made in Istanbul in spring 2022, when the delegations from both sides have managed to work out a draft document. But at the same time, what Moscow is saying very clearly is that there should be no imaginary peace proposals that are coming from the Western countries without the participation of Russia. And obviously, with regard to that, he's referring to the very fact that in Switzerland next week it is expected to be held a peace conference, as it is called in the West, on the Ukrainian conflict, where Russia has not been invited. So Russia's understanding here is very clear that any arrangement, any peace talks are possible when the Russian interests are also taken into account.
A bird flu patient in Mexico died due to multiple health causes and not because of the flu virus. He was the first confirmed case of avian influenza in Mexico. The causes of his death and the virus infection are under scientific investigation. A Spanish NGO prepared to release 2 loggerhead turtles, which have recovered after having their fins amputated ahead of World Ocean Day. Loggerhead turtles lose their fins due to the impact of marine rubbish on their bodies. A traditional food eaten by people of the ocean of the Dragon Boat Festival, Zongji, was served to giant pandas at a zoo in Guangzhou in South China's Guangdong province as an extra offering to the beloved fluffy animals. The Dragon Boat Festival will be celebrated on June 10 in China. Still to come here on DD India Live, the French President Emmanuel Macron welcomes US President Joe Biden on a state visit. And heavy rains in Australia's east spark flash flooding.
नरेंद्र दामोदर दास मोदी ईश्वर की शपथ लेता हूं, भारत के संविधान के प्रति सच्ची श्रद्धा और निष्ठा रखूंगा। मैं नरेंद्र दामोदर दास मोदी संघ के प्रधानमंत्री के रूप में अपने कर्तव्यों का श्रद्धापूर्वक और शुद्ध अंतःकरण से निर्वहन करूंगा। पहली 3 इकोनॉमीज में एक नाम भारत का होगा। मेरे शरीर का हर कण, मेरे समय का हर क्षण देश को ही समर्पित है। देश का विश्वास पक्का हो गया है कि अब भारत की विकास यात्रा रुकने वाली नहीं है।
You're watching DD India Live. I'm Mark Lynn. As voting is underway for the EU parliamentary elections in Slovakia, the Prime Minister Robert Fico cast a vote in a hospital in Bratislava on Saturday. Fico, who has been recovering at home after being shot 4 times at close range, was at the hospital for a routine checkup when he cast his vote. Slovakia joins a 4-day election. This is of new European Parliament, with that is going to face mounting security, industrial and political challenges. Voting to the EU legislature was held in the Netherlands on Thursday, Ireland and the Czech Republic on Friday, Malta, Slovakia and Latvia on Saturday. And in the rest of the 27 countries, it's going to be held on Sunday. Meanwhile, polling in Latvia is underway, as we said. The Latvian Prime Minister Evika Selina has also cast her vote in the ongoing EU parliamentary elections. The Greek Prime Minister, Kyriakos Mitsotakis, appealed to Greeks on Friday to cast their ballots. The Greek Prime Minister was addressing a final campaign rally ahead of the EU vote. Mitsotakis told a rally of party supporters in central Athens to vote for candidates that would strengthen Greece's voice in Brussels and in Strasbourg. And he added that his government would continue to support citizens with measures to tackle rising prices.
These EU elections are doubly important as they will decide major European targets that are completely connected to our lives in Greece and our priorities. We must elect European members of parliament that will strengthen our country's voice in Brussels and Strasbourg. We will not stop supporting our weakest citizens with emergency intervention, with a stable increase in wages, pensions and disposable income.
And DD India's Ross Cullen now joins us from Paris with an update on this story. Well, Ross, France votes tomorrow. What's expected?
Yeah, we had the final opinion poll released, Mark, just a couple of days ago. Saturday, today, June the 8th, is a day of repose in terms of the electoral campaign. There's no events planned by any of the main parties. Meant to be a day for voters to be able to consider, weigh up all their options ahead of casting their ballots on Sunday. But as regards that opinion poll, just confirming the lay of the land, no major changes of what we've seen throughout March and April, the build-up to this vote. We know that the far-right nationalist populist National Rally Party polling at 32% there or thereabouts throughout the whole of the campaign. That was also what they hit in that final opinion poll just a couple of days ago. Pretty much joint second then, tied both Emmanuel Macron's party, Renaissance, and this socialist group led by Raphael Glucksmann, a leftist MP who's been able to garner a lot of support. Some of Macron's centrist party, the left-hand side of that party, feeling that their vote is perhaps better represented by Mr. Glucksmann's party. So joint on 15%, both Renaissance and the socialist group. Then the other far-right party, Reconquest, led by Marine Le Pen's niece, and also their opposite, the far-left Greens party. They're both polling at around 5%. So we do expect the greatest number of French MPs to be returned by the nationalist, populist National Rally Party.
So, do French MEPs who belong to opposition parties have to work in coordination with the French government while representing France in Europe? I mean, what are their duties and limitations?
Yeah, so these elections have no impact on the domestic makeup of the French Parliament. They're often seen, Mark, as a bit of a protest vote. You know that you can vote against the government without changing the government, perhaps here in France, but you are sending your representatives to speak for you in Brussels on your behalf. We do know that Jordan Bardella, who is the leader of the National Rally Party, he is hoping to form what he's described as a blocking majority with other like-minded nationalist, populist members of the European Parliament to try to put hurdles in to the mainstream centre-right and the mainstream centre-left politics and policies that are trying to be pursued by Brussels, trying to stand up for what they say are the common people, stand against the elites in Brussels, one of the main calling points of the National Rally Party. So they're hoping to score big and return the greatest number of MEPs to be able to advance and forward their nationalist populist policies in Brussels, but that's what they have as their own policies. What they do there doesn't impact the makeup of the French Parliament, but I will add that there are rumours that Emmanuel Macron is reportedly considering, if his party suffers a major defeat in these elections and comes second or third, he is considering perhaps calling a general election here in France later in the year.
Okay, Ross Collin, thanks very much for joining us from Paris. Now, the US President Joe Biden and the First Lady Jill Biden of the US on Saturday were welcomed by the French President Emmanuel Macron at the Élysée Palace in Paris. Upon arrival there, Biden and Macron attended a ceremony at the iconic Arc de Triomphe, where the leaders paid their respects at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. The US President Biden is on an official state visit to Paris, and during the visit, both the leaders are scheduled to hold several talks on trade, on Israel, Ukraine, among other subjects. France is planning to try to restrict children's access to social media. The French president says that young people are at risk from harm online. Macron asked a commission of experts to examine the risks to children of spending too much time on screens, and they have recommendations for new legislation. Ross Cullen reports.
From social media to online gaming and watching videos, screens now dominate a large part of our lives. But it's the impact on children's development that is worrying the French government. In a major speech last month, the French president said that the legal age for using social media should be no younger than 15.
And today, for several hours a day, we open the door to the jungle. And that same person could be a victim of cyberbullying, or subject to pornographic material or pedocriminality. That's what the online space is, because it's not regulated, and it is not moderated either.
In April, a survey by French public health authorities showed that 2-year-olds in France spend about an hour a day in front of a screen. For child psychiatrist Anne Siniquier, it's a problem that must be addressed.
These screens are a bit hypnotic for children. There is lots of light, movement, bright colors, lots of sound. I mean, just look at a child watching TV. You can call them 100 times, and they won't respond in any way because they are completely hypnotized.
In 2023, the government said it wanted to introduce prevention messages on computers, tablets and phones to advise consumers in a similar way to the warnings on tobacco products. And protecting young people from too much screen time has cross-party support. Earlier this year, the opposition Republican Party tabled a bill calling for a ban on screens in nurseries for children under 3. Some of the new laws could include no screens for the under 3s, smartphones only being allowed for those under the age of 13, and a recommendation not to use Instagram or TikTok if you're under the age of 18. Ross Cullen in Paris, reporting for DD India.
India's National Testing Agency, the NTA, has said that the whole process of the National Eligibility Cum Entrance Test 2024 has been very transparent, and the integrity of the examination throughout the country was not compromised. The examination was held on the 5th of May and the result was declared on the 4th of June. Addressing the media in the national capital, the Director General of the NTA, Subodh Kumar Singh, said that there was no paper leak, and he further added that the NTA has formed a high-powered committee to analyze the grievances of concerned students.
हम लोगों ने पूरा एक कमेटी बना के एक्सपर्ट का एनालाइज किया और उनके ग्रीवांसेस एड्रेस किए कि जिससे जो 23 लाख कैंडिडेट्स हैं उनका भी इशू ना हो और जो इतने कैंडिडेट्स हैं उनके भी इशू ना हो। हमने ग्रीवांस रिड्रेसल कमेटी बनाई थी, उसने जो रिकमेंडेशंस दी थी उनको जो है एक हाई पावर्ड कमेटी एनालाइज कर ले। तो एक हमने कमेटी बनाई है, उस कमेटी के वो कमेटी इनको एक बार फिर से देख लेगी कि जो इनके ग्रीवांसेस थे 1600 कैंडिडेट्स के, उनके भी ग्रीवांसेस ना रहें और जो 23 लाख लोगों के मन में हैं कि काफ़ी सारे टॉपर्स आ गए, ये आ गए, तो इनके भी इशूज वो ना हों।
The India Meteorological Department has announced an increase in rainfall activity along the coasts of Karnataka and Maharashtra starting June 8. Thunderstorm and rain with maximum temperature of 35 degrees Celsius is predicted for Tamil Nadu. The IMD has issued a yellow alert for the state. The Met Office has also issued a yellow alert for the national capital today. Temperatures are expected to range between 42 to 29 degrees Celsius for the maximum minimum, and the city's weather is undergoing a shift caused by the influence of a fresh western disturbance. Flash floods in the Australian city of Sydney on Saturday prompted immediate evacuation and rescue operations. According to authorities, heavy rains caused the flash floods in the low-lying areas in the city. So far, rescue services had helped 13 people. Floods are the second deadliest natural disasters in Australia after heat waves, accounting for 20% of the disaster-related deaths. Australia's weather forecaster has warned of a major flooding on Saturday as well. And that's all we have in this edition of DD India Live, but let's know your thoughts on the news of the day. And for those of you on the go, you can get the latest news and updates from India and across the world on the DD India mobile app. The app is available on both Android and iOS platforms. Scan the QR code and download it. Yeah, well, we'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Mark Lynn from all of us here in Delhi. Thank you very much for watching DD India Live. Namaskar.